Jovinsky, the Hungry Mouse.
Now the food guy.
The food guy. Launched a pizza tour company, Pizza City, based on Steve's book of the same name. Pizza City offers walking pizza tours, which a good combo is walk off the pizza, and coach tours every weekend in Chicago. Amy and her husband also launched Pizza City Fest, a 2-day festival held annually in Chicago and Los Angeles, with more cities planned in the future. Amy has been a mentor to many, including One, a Chicago-based startup incubator, and with Executives Club of Chicago, and with Jewish United Fund Center program. He graduated from the U of I Champaign, right, with a degree in speech communication. Awesome. All right, going down the line here, we have Ellen Huang. Yes, thanks, Ellen. She is a Chicago-born and raised mental health professional and second generation. Ellen holds a bachelor's degree in communication and media from DePaul University and a master's degree in counseling psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Ellen recently took over her family's business, New Ideas Plant Shop, in the Asia on Long Island corridor of over 20 years. As a recipient of Chicago Recovery Program grant, she was able to modernize and renovate the shop with extensive renovations, while also offering space to another local organization, Bio, to open a cafe and cultural event space. She believes in the power of community collaboration and partnerships and mechanisms to carry on cultural legacies and diverse ethnic origins. Since the completion of the renovations, she has partnered with Bio and other community entities to plan the AAPI Knockout Block Party and continues to host creative, culturally relevant programming within the space. She looks forward to building a space where culture, making, continue to happen, and find ways to curate new programming that intersects her love of experience with her expertise in mental health and larger inclusive topics for wider audiences. Welcome, Ellen. And lastly, we have Peg Dunn. She is the founder of Little Inspirations Childcare Centers located in Hyde Park, founded in 2008, growing the organization from a home daycare to 2 successful childcare centers serving over 100 children and employing over 35 staff. Prior to founding Little Inspirations, Peg served as a teacher in both independent and public schools for over 15 years. She holds a BA in elementary education from the University of Iowa and an MS in educational leadership from Teachers College, Columbia University, New York. Peg graduated with a certificate of entrepreneurship from City Chicago Colleges in conjunction with Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. That same year, Peg won the Fast Track Award from WBDC. Since 2022, Peg has been training in the Sacred Classroom, Emotional Intelligence, Compassionate Communication, and a variety of breathwork and healing practices at Prajna Wisdom Center and Creative School in Bangalore, Indiana. Welcome, Peg. Yes, so I'm super excited to get started to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy weeks to come with us. So today's conversation, again, is really going to focus on the financial capital aspects of building successful business. And we wanted to focus specifically on physical presence, whether that's a pop-up, a festival, a storefront, a center of some sort, whatever that is one of the biggest reasons people come to us, because there's such big barriers to be able to do that, whether that's getting access to a shared kitchen or starting up your own restaurant. That stuff is real expensive. So the first question here, we'll just kind of
children in my home to equal my teacher's salary. That was pretty much it. But scaling the business was a big expense because infant, toddler, child care, there are many, many regulations on the space build out, and meeting those needs from renting the space itself to providing the build out that we would require in order to have legal operations and top quality care was a huge chunk. We were very, very lucky to be able to scale slowly, moving from my house to part of our children in a church basement. And the church basement, we were able to rent 3 classrooms in St. Paul and the Redeemer in Hyde Park. And we are so grateful because they were able to provide us the space at a really low cost to help us to save money and prepare for next sense. We couldn't serve our infants and toddlers there due to regulations. So during that time, we were looking for other spaces that may be able to house us and be able to find a way to do the build out. The build out for us in 2010 cost over $350,000, which was not accessible by any means for me. But we were really, really lucky that Hyde Park and the 53rd Street TIF, we were right in the 53rd Street TIF district. So that was a huge, huge help in being able to provide us with grant money through the SPIF grant, which I highly recommend to anyone who's looking for space to research in the city of Chicago where the TIF districts are, and if you can find a space in the TIF district, it can be really, really helpful. They were able to grant us around it was over $200,000. It's a reimbursement grant, so we did have to get bank loan financing until we were able to get the reimbursement, complete all of the work, provide all the paperwork to the city, and get that money back. However, having the confirmation letter from that SWIFT grant was made getting a loan so much easier because the bank could see, okay, there's a guaranteed repayment as long as you follow your protocol. So the city of Chicago, Summer Core 503, was really, really helpful. I don't know if I knew about the Women's Business Development Center at that time. I think that during that process was kind of when I started to learn about the Women's Business Development Center and started to take some classes with them around the child care industry, which they have a wonderful whole system of helping entrepreneurs who are starting child care centers. So that really benefited me and they helped me to move along that path. That's a good start.
Yeah, that's an amazing start. In similar vein, Q Ideas has been open over 22 years, and I had inherited this business from my family. With that, I inherited no paperwork, no understanding. I really had to learn from scratch. And this is where WBDC came in. I had met with Emma, had a chat about how to prepare my paperwork, and it was daunting. Having never done that, and if you remember briefly, my history was not in business. Learning all that just to get ready and prepare, it was scary. I was really scared, and it was causing procrastination, I will say, on my part. Because I was in my own way. I was thinking I couldn't do it. So I would say, though it was a financial hurdle that I went through, it was also a mental hurdle. I'm trying to decide, can I do this, right? It feels as if I haven't seen people mad before. Of course I could do this. And so having chatted with Emma, really sitting through with some friends and family and trying to find support and seeing I've been able to maintain or be a part of my community, have the backing and love of my community to encourage me to say, you know what, let's just do it. Let's knock it out of the park. It was 3 hours looking through it. I had some customers that were open to helping me and look through some of the paperwork and
Could you tell us what the paperwork is?
Yeah. So paperwork being when you're asking for a loan, you're gonna need, well, I've been around, but I don't know what it is for New Start, but at least 3 years of taxes. You want to have your cash flow, you want to have all of your statements, just your expenses in order, so you can really get a bearing about
what it takes to run a business, what it'll take to run your business. And it's really scary to look at the numbers. It's a large amount of money sometimes when you're looking at it. And I think that it was the idea of how much it would be and looking at the numbers and being really scared of just about the numbers in general that really stopped me. But once I crunched it up and I really saw, like, you know what? There are aspects in which I could make some changes and made me feel comfortable and confident that I knew I could do it. I just had to really believe in myself and have that logical evidence to show me that here are ways I can. And here are ways if something happens, I can cut here, here, and here, or have a plan here, here, and here. And I had it in me, and I was excited about it, so it was not that daunting at all once I got a hold of it. It's just when you don't have information and you are nervous about it that you get in your own way. Upon getting all that paperwork together and presenting it to the bank, and really, I was really scared. The bank was like, oh my gosh, you're really organized. I have it in the file of the scaries, right? And I handed it to the bank, and they said, and I was really lucky. I went to a local bank in the neighborhood, and I presented what I was trying to do, and I was able to receive a loan, a community-based loan that was actually, my interest rate was only 3%. I know, and I just got this, so it wasn't that long ago. And then I also demonstrated a similar letter of reimbursement from the City of Chicago for what we call the Chicago Recovery Grant, CRP. Even though I didn't necessarily receive the money yet, and this is the thing, right? Like, you have a letter that's confirmed, but you don't have a cent from them. It's hard. So I was able to demonstrate with the bank that I was, I was secure, I was safe. I had to believe it, so that I could show them that I was able to get that a loan about, I want to say $110,000, 3%, and pay and keep going as I went to do my renovations. The renovations were, I would say, about $500,000, and we're still not done. As you would expect, there are some snafus along the way. What was really helpful is build a good team. You build a good team, and sometimes they're a little expensive, but when they believe in the cause, they'll back you 110%, and that's the kind of people you want in your corner. So we had a wonderful architect team, wonderful construction team that helped us when we had issues with the city to navigate some what would be unexpected situations, whether it be inspection, whether it be understanding codes for building, and all those little minor details. So that allowed us to open somewhat on time and relatively be prepared to just be a usable, safe space. We were able to meet our mark in opening and being under renovation about 3 months, but we were split into 3 sectors. So our retail side opened, but our other 2, office and nonprofit, is on its way to do, we had to create a new address, so that's here nor there. But I will say, I think that for me, the financial hurdle is, like I mentioned, the emotional aspect, getting that loan from my bank, and I think just opening. It's not going to be perfect, just opening the doors, getting ready, and believing in yourself. That's the first, I would say, one of the major steps.
So, that was great.
Thanks.
I'm learning so much from both of you. So, I have a very different background. I've been in professional services, either the founder of a professional services firm or one of the founders of a professional services firm. Professional services meaning for 10 years I was in a finance and accounting consulting firm, kind of a spin-off of like a Deloitte or EY. For those of you who know, like a big 4 accounting or consulting firm. So I was the only non-accountant or MBA in my entire company of 100 people. But I know how to sell, and they were often uncomfortable with selling, so we grew that company over 10 years, and we sold it to a private equity-backed consulting firm. So that was my first and probably most successful exit, which was a long time ago. And I got some of that in equity, so I earned my equity, and then I put money into the company. And I was young at that point, and that was my first real building and selling a company. Then I worked in HR consulting, and I still am in professional services. So my day job, my full-time job, is I'm in a recruiting business. So I work with companies to help them hire talent, either either one-off searches or we might help them hire 10, 15, 20 salespeople at a time. And I came into that job in the beginning of the pandemic, and I will not go into this, but I'm happy to talk to you offline. I was in the cannabis industry for a short while, and call me before getting involved in that industry. But I was the chief revenue officer for what is a consumer products company. And I decided that I really missed professional services. While in cannabis, I now have cannabis investments and interests, and I have 3 businesses with my husband, which is why I'm here today. Those are a consulting firm that does like food and events, custom events, like, you know, if you want to take your family on a custom food crawl, or you want to get media trained how to be on TV, my husband does most of that work. And then we have a pizza tour business. It's seasonal, no overhead at all. And then we have a pizza festival business, lots of expenses. And so the reason I gave you the history of me up front is I'm a risk taker, but very calculated, and most of the businesses that I've been in are all human capital, and I was very nervous about anything consumer facing, to be honest with you, because we're all consumers, right? Consumers are tough. I've always been in B2B, and now I'm in 2 B2C businesses. So every week we do pizza tours, they're open to the public, the tickets are bought online, but we have no overhead of that business. So during COVID, we shut down completely, we couldn't do pizza tours. We restarted in 2021, and because we didn't have much overhead or we didn't have employees, we also didn't get any of those funds from the government. So we just shut down and reopened. But the festival business is a $500,000 to $1 million, $500,000 to $1 million worth of expenses for each festival. And that freaked me out. But my husband is a genius creative. And he said, everyone likes pizza, so there's a rib fest. There's all kinds, there's a bacon fest, but there was no pizza fest. So in 2021, we started the business with 0 capital. So when we talk about capital, everything that I've done has been self-funded. So now I'm learning all about the other ways to get funding, but we self-funded everything, and it's scary. I mean, right? Like, it's not easy to do. I've decided to open low asset businesses, so our revenue comes from ticket sales, sponsorships, and maybe other ways of partnering with firms for product or services. But raising $500,000 worth of revenue, I've relied on my banks. So I created a relationship with Chase. I'm very open to Kiva, and I'm excited to hear more about ways that you can have alternative funding, because I think that's really important for small businesses to have alternative funding. But when you cash flow, what I was going to say is cash flow is really important. I'm sure you both have thought of that. I'm obsessed with cash flow with my husband, and I try to explain to him, he's the creative, I'm the business, like what it's going to take to put these festivals on. So we use QuickBooks, and I use Chase for help, and then because I was in the finance and accounting consulting business, I too assembled a great team. I have an interim bookkeeper, and I have an interim CFO, and they're my former colleagues of 20, 30 years, and I rely on them heavily. So we budget, forecast, all of those tools in QuickBooks, in Google, and then I use my bank for advice and help. And Chase has been helpful. So those are my experiences. I could go into more, maybe we'll
we'll go into it. So thank you so much for that.
When you go on, do you mind if we share what TIF and SPIF stands for?
Yeah, that's
You want to
good.
define those for us, Craig? Okay, I can define those for you.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of recap as we go here. So a TIF is a tax incremental finance, and SPIF is a small business improvement fund. So a TIF district is like a collection of addresses. So it could be like a street. All that information is available on the City of Chicago's website. You can actually look up a business, any address, and see if it's in a TIF district. They are phasing out in the next 20 years, but so basically it's also like a rotating selection of TIFs. So depending on the TIF, depending on your address, you're kind of on deck or active in being able to access those capital options. SPIF is somewhat similar, also kind of a rotating program. That one's also with the city of Chicago, and that is really right. What you were talking about, reimbursable grants. So grants can be something I apply, and then I get approved, and then I get all the cash up front, and then I basically just eventually have to report on using that funding for whatever I said I was going to use it for. Reimbursable funds are different because you have to submit a proposal of your work. It has to fall within the eligibility requirements of the Small Business Improvement Fund. A lot of times it's like facade updates and things of that nature. You get approved for that, but you have to go find your own financing, which is usually the hardest part. Because the key part, as you're saying, Kat, is you get refunded if you do the work that you said you were going to do that was agreed upon, and you do it in a certain time frame. So once you do all that, you submit all of your paperwork correctly to the city, then you get your payday, and you do get reimbursed for that. So those are two options, and then there's also Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. All of this information you can get on the City of Chicago's website. Summer Corps is a great resource. They are the SPIF administrator, and I think also NLF as well. So the recap here, I would say, is like to that point, make sure you're making yourself aware of the different opportunities. Think, alderman, like all the way down to your alderperson. Do you know your alderperson? If you're thinking about getting a space in a neighborhood, talk to the alderperson, right? And then kind of go up from there. So who is your Cook County commissioner? Who is, your state rep? Kind of keep going up from a political perspective, but then from a government perspective, make sure you're aware of the different programs. City, county, everybody forgets county, but they have a lot of good stuff. County, state, and federal. So I think trying to use the resources, that's super important. Ellen, I'm so glad you talked about the emotional aspect of that. Yeah. As well as I love what you said about there's no perfect opening. There is no such thing as a perfect opening, right? Yeah. So sometimes you kind of have to do what's quick and dirty to get open so that you can start having that revenue, right? And then Amy, I loved what you said about, the comparison of overhead of different businesses, right? If you're doing something that's not involving a physical presence, oftentimes that overhead is so much different. And so I think that highlights the challenge of going from where you're doing something where you can kind of have an on-off spigot, and you can turn on the revenue, you can turn off the revenue, kind of at will. When you have that dedication and you have committed, you're committed, right? Your expenses are your expenses. They are what they are, right? And I also loved what you both were talking about community banking. That's super important, having a relationship with your banker. Ellen, you talked about staying ready. So getting ready and staying ready, right? So that when an opportunity comes like a SPIF, like we said, the time is important. If you're not ready, that ship sails, right? For that grant window, 3 weeks, that ship sails, right? So going into a little bit more, I would love to know, I really, really am excited for this question because we're all friends here. So tell us about a mistake or a setback that you had that was had some kind of financial impact, and how did you react to that? And maybe anything you learned from that situation.
Which one to choose?
Yeah.
I think, first of all, the best thing you can do for yourself is expect that there will be a setback and prepare yourself emotionally for that, because they never come when you expect them, right? So the unexpected, I think the most unexpected setback that, COVID is a big one. Certainly everything was shut down, but even right before that, Little Inspirations acquired a childcare center, and which was a 10-month process that involved finances, legal, a whole lot of relationship building, and working with the DCFS representative, Department of Children and Family Services, representative, and the whole department. And there's a lot of alignment that must happen on the same day, from the legal papers to being signed, to financial transactions, to actually getting your childcare license for that particular space. And in an acquisition where you want to continue the operations running without having closure, which affects the families and the staff, that precision is really important. So anyway, we got it all aligned. We signed on the dot, we dotted line, we made the financial transaction. We got the email from the licensing rep saying that everything is clear from the state's end. And then I get a call from the director of the center saying they have evacuated due to a roof fire. All in the same day. So that was a huge financial setback and a huge logistical setback. It took us 6 months to reopen that center. And I think, everything from restoration of the space to the lease and figuring out who was responsible the transaction had been made, so we're responsible, but the landlord, there was so many logistical factors. And in the end, I would say that a few things made it work out well. One was we made a plan for the people first, because there were a lot of people that were affected, both in the transition of the acquisition that caused a lot of insecurity and not knowing exactly what was coming next. And then to be shut down immediately due to a disaster, which first let me say that everyone was fine. The staff did an incredible job of evacuating the children. The damage was really done from the fire department putting out the roof fire. Nothing happened inside. It was just water damage and smoke damage. But the repair had to start with the people first. And I think that's a really important piece to remember, because business isn't business without the people in every level. So we started by having a plan for the people, both the families and the staff, and worked on the finances. And I think the end is really, again, about the relationships. We had a great relationship with the new landlord. We had a great relationship from the company we were acquiring from, so that we were able to work out all of those transition logistics. We started to establish the best relationship we could under the confidentiality of the acquisition with the team and the families. And we had a great relationship with our insurance providers who advised us well when we were adding the location. And so that financial setback, while so scary and had a lot of financial implications, luckily, I think having some reserves whenever you're making a change is really important, so that you can predict some setback and be prepared for it. We did have good relationships with our bankers, and we did have a line of credit that we could have accessed as well. Luckily, due to our insurance providers, we didn't need that right up front. So, it was just really looking at every aspect of the business and preparing for what could a setback look like, and how can I be prepared all around the board. I think it's, again, not anything that you can ever anticipate. To the extent that you can predict, project, and some of this is personality, but I always think of worst case scenario first, and I kind of work from the extremes, right? So I think of worst case scenario, best case scenario, and then I try to play around with the middle ground as much as possible, and I think I try to do that in every aspect of the business, but certainly from the financial end, it has served me well.
That was a great setback.
We have a question real quick.
Children, obviously brought up the insurance. What kind of insurance do you have to keep liability for? Is it a lot more expensive than it would be for just a normal business?
Oh, yeah. It is. It's quite pricey and it keeps escalating.
Yeah.
We have the Department of Children and Family Services has a minimum requirement that you must have to open a center. And I don't want to speak inaccurately about what that is. I know that we made the choice to go above and beyond that in the regular insurance and add umbrellas to each location as well.
I need a question. Setback. Tell us about a setback or anything that you have. Yeah.
So what I would say is be open to disaster. That's it, right?
Yeah.
If you're prepared for disaster, I'm not talking like don't think always the worst, but when you're open, you're able to see more opportunity to pivot. I think for me, financially, the aspect that a lot of people don't think about sometimes is the cost to yourself, right? Making sure you're still your top priority, that you're taking care of yourself because you're the leader here, right? Maintaining as best you can some of your routines, making sure your mental health is well. Having clarity of mind makes everything feel less daunting, and you can tackle it head on. Really, we've had some financial setbacks in, again, as I stated earlier, not preparing my statements and procrastinating due to my own, worries and fears. I was not able to. I just delayed myself. I delayed my loan seeking. I delayed some of my projects because I'm scared. To be honest, it's scary. And so because of that, playing catch up did cause me a lot of stress. And once I was able to secure some things financially, the bank support, and move on with my construction open, at least a third of it, hearing people's feedback saying like, I heard this when this was just an idea 2 years ago, and now it's in front, I'm really inspired. Fire was under my butt, I'm telling you. I was ready to go because it wasn't just my dream anymore. And so that encouraged me to keep going. But I also understood in order to keep going and have something for somebody, I had to take care of me first. So I think for me, the biggest financial setback is because it did cost me, right? Because I'm tired, so I'm taking more conveniences. I'm not eating well. I'm just taking longer to do things. And so it costs my team. So I think that for me, the biggest financial setback really is just not taking care of myself, honestly. So think about yourself first.
I think I heard some agreement.
It's hard.
Amy.
So during COVID, in the beginning of COVID, I joined my company, and Lucas James Town Partners recruiting firm. We were staffed up in a certain way, and then business just went away. People were like, we can't hire anybody. So our business went down pretty dramatically during 2020, but the good news was, and this is my founder, I'm not the founder, I'm like the number two. And by the way, I was very happy to be the number two. I said to him, I have done this many times, and I have these companies of my own separate from you. I know how hard it is to be you, Tim, and I'm here for you as your number two. Because we had to make cuts, we all took financial salary cuts to our commission. That's what founders do, is they take the burden on themselves first. And then we tried to delay that to our employee base, but we couldn't. So everyone, even more recently, we had to do some cuts and take pay cuts ourselves. That's what you do when you want to survive through difficult periods. So that's one financial setback, is having to cut your pay. And you have to be ready for that and prepared and have a cushion for that. I'll tell you what is now, looking back, something that I can not laugh about, but I'm much more comfortable about, like how we avoid this in the future. But in 2023, is that last year? Yeah, 2023, our second Chicago Pizza City Fest was held in a new venue with a new partner, with a new production company. And I was really excited because it was in a really cool venue, and we were going to share in the all the expenses and the revenue, and that was a good model for us. So basically, we didn't have to take on all the expenses up front. So where you can find partnerships to share in that, so we basically shared in all the expenses and shared in all the revenue, but they took on bill paying and things like that for us. But we realized, as a result of this mistake, that there's only two factors that could make or break our pizza festivals. One is power. If you don't have power, you can't have a festival. Electricity, generators, and you can't have pizza, fresh pizza at a pizza festival without ovens. And so those are the two critical, like if you know the critical factors of your business, like everything is a little easier to figure out, and the clarity around getting those right, everything else will fall in place. So for us, the two most important things are ovens and power. On the day of the festival, when we showed up at like 7 a.m., there was no power to half of the ovens. And it was because the production company had not overseen the power people laying the power, and the power was laid wrong. It was the incorrect level. I don't even know anything about electricity. It was supposed to be 8 versus 4 gauge or power, and it wasn't. And so by the time our festival opened, only half the ovens were functional, meaning that hundreds and hundreds of people were in line waiting, and they could only eat half of the pizzas at our festival. Long story short, it was fixed, but it was too late. The publicity was terrible for my husband personally, because people blamed him personally. People in consumer businesses, you know, I paid for this, I want all my money back. And so we refunded every single person that we claimed. So that was $40,000 worth of refunds through our ticket broker. And we just didn't argue with people. And I'm sure you've had experiences similar, like there's no arguing with people. The customer is right. And so we refunded $40,000 worth of our profit to them. We ended up doing okay. We didn't lose money on the festival, but we didn't make money on the festival. And so now I know that the two most important factors in our festivals are power and ovens. And so if those are right, we can figure everything else out from there. So I share that story with you because there was a major financial impact to us, and there would be in the future if we make these mistakes again. But luckily in our LA festival in April, we were like, people, if we get these two things right, we can figure out everything else. The other thing is permitting and health safety, you know, regulations, like abiding by everything and getting everything done far in advance. If you ever need permitting, if you ever need city approval, working way in advance is the secret to our success. So those were a couple learnings.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm learning a lot here too.
Yes.
So knowing, like, I mean,
Emma, bring the microphone.
Pizza and power. Pizza and power. Like, and that goes back to this like horribly sexist book I had to read in my operations class in undergrad. Yeah, it was awful. But it basically said your bottleneck, you can only go as fast as your smallest bottleneck. You can only go as fast as half your ovens can make, right? So thinking about, you know, definitely, I'm also a little bit of a pessimist, but I have the same streak type where you're like, what could possibly go wrong here? And sometimes stuff happens that's just out of your realm of even possibility. And when you have a physical space, again, like, people are coming and showing up to your space expecting a certain experience. And as a business owner, you want to provide a consistent experience that protects your brand. So thinking about what could go wrong, right? What could go wrong may very well go wrong. So how do you create that great team, you're saying, Ellen? And the financial cost of yourself, right? There's some people who want to start up a big storefront, a huge investment, but when you talk to them about their personal finances, they're just not in a very good place. Never recommend people start a physical storefront or a physical space or a festival. You are not able to take care of number one. How can you take care of everybody else, right? Awesome insight so far. So I have one last rapid fire question, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. If you could give advice to our entrepreneurs gathered here today, what would be like your one or two pieces of advice from a capital or financial perspective if you're thinking about getting into a physical location?
I'm gonna pull a little bit here from things that you both have said, because Amy, I think you bring up a really important part of know what your business needs. Know those most important pieces and have those figured out as much as possible up front, and have kind of a backup plan for if those key pieces are not fully in place. And kind of along those lines, I think use what you have, right? Know your own strengths, and you're the heart of the business at first, whether you have a space or not. And so know what you bring and make that a priority and take care of yourself. I would say, for me, being able to start small and grow with the need was so helpful, because I was able to take care of myself. I was able to take care of my family. And then when we jumped up and had a big build out in space, that became a lot harder, right? And so the next advice I would say is know what are your strengths, and build a really strong team that complements you. I think networking outside of your business gives so many ideas. Using resources to know what's out there that can be your support, because everyone needs support and you can't do it all yourself. As entrepreneurs, it's so easy to think that we can, and our passions in it are, we're 100% in, we're running there, and we want to dive in. And I mean, I remember painting the kitchen before an inspection of one of our sites at 3 o'clock in the morning. My mom was there helping me. I mean, it was amazing, and it was powerful, and a great memory for our mother-daughter relationship. But in retrospect, might have been great to hire a painter. But right? So, just kind of knowing what your needs are, what those key parts of your business are, what you can do really well and what you need help to do. Find your resources, network within your community, find new networks outside of your community, and talk to the Women's Business Development. I mean, they've really, really been so helpful for me, and so many classes that they've had have helped me to better understand myself, my business, and the broader industry that I'm in, as well as the whole entrepreneurial landscape.
Awesome, thank you. Just a quick show of hands, who is doing retail or thinking about a brick and mortar for retail? Okay, so I'll tailor it in. What I do when I'm thinking about capital or doing retail based as being a plant store is, when I'm purchasing an item, I think about very specifically imagining a customer walking in my store. Is that someone I realistically see walking in my store? And is it a low cost enough? Because it's a lot of overhead, right? You just want to buy a little bit at a time, just to test your market. And having a kind of budget about maybe under $10, much you're willing to, realistically say, like, is it like a grab on the counter thing? Is it something, someone can afford all across different types of, when I'm thinking about my customer range, it's a wide range, not something too niche. When I'm thinking about buying something, I think like that. And I think a dozen. I imagine how many people walking in, I think about a time, and I think about where I'm located. Those are some things. And sometimes even, for example, you see this all together now, clubs, wine club, cheese club. You have a bunch of material, you're like, it's not selling. Think about a way to pivot what you already have without spending any more, okay? That's a great idea. You can have a club, you can market in other ways this way that you're not stuck. And if you can collect some profit before you get the item and order it afterwards, that's a surefire way of like, okay, I know at least half of this product is going. when you're thinking about perishable like food or plants, right? Those things gotta go. They're not lasting long. Have a, work together, maybe think about, because sometimes think about brick and mortars is you're stuck in one location. Try to see how you can have product in your store by popping up other places, leaving there, hey, can I sell some of my stuff here? You guys seem like you don't have this stuff. Nobody wants to overhead. So if you can have people pop up in your space and you have stuff to sell and people are coming in, there's something interesting to look at without having to spend money, do it. This is what you want to do. So that's how I think about it when I'm thinking about retail item purchasing. Try to, it can be a little bit of a gamble sometimes with things that are holiday based, very seasonal based. Sometimes it, pays, but try small. Think small and by bit to test your market. But have a plan a little bit about, when I see pasta, I'm imagining, someone coming off work off the Damon bus and they want to grab something. I want to take it home. It's an 8-minute thing. I have everything I need. It's a one meal grab. They're going to get that. Or how much will people pay, unfortunately, in a little bit for convenience? Yeah. All of it's together. So wanting to be a little bit realistic, checking around your market to see what else is around at that price range and being reasonable. What do you want to be the selling point in this space? Oh, it's reasonably priced for a convenient spot. It has everything I need really quickly on the way home. I don't have to walk so far. Think about these aspects and how much you think you would pay realistically.
So, being older, I feel like I have more power and wisdom than I ever realized that I would have. And I wish that I knew this when I was younger. I wish I knew my power. I wish I trusted my gut. I wish I knew that I was smart, like all of you. You're smart. Like, you know what to do. So in many ways, you should trust your gut more. So that's one thing I would always say. I get when I've been interviewed, like, what would you tell your younger self? So that's the answer to that question. The other thing that when people come to me for advice, they often hear is, there's no money in that. So I now am just unfiltered, also comes with age, in my advice, because I feel like, why sugarcoat it? So if you have a good idea and there's no money in it, don't do it. It's really hard to evaluate that, I think, but I'm sorry, I want to make money in my businesses. I want to, create some wealth for myself and my family. I'm not a nonprofit. I'm not in the nonprofit business, so think about money. Can you make, and women don't talk about this enough, like, can you make money in what you're doing? Is there a need in the market, a gap, a need to be filled? Do you solve a problem that needs to be solved? If you don't do it. Because, so people come to me with an idea, they'll be like, I want to do, here's one idea that I've heard a lot, like, colleges don't offer enough career coaching or professional service, like, what career should you be in and how can you take your background and do something with that background? And I'll say to people, it's a fantastic idea, thinking about how to coach young people into careers. There's no money in it. There's no money in it because people won't pay for that service. But what will people pay for? There's probably something in the idea I just said that people will pay for, but thus far I have not found that people will pay for certain things that there might be a need out there for, but they don't value it enough to pay for it. They get it for free in other ways. So think about how you can make money in your business and how you can grow. Is it recurring monthly revenue through a club? Is it through a subscription? I will tell you that being private equity backed is very good and very, very complicated. Venture backed or friends and family fundraising is a little easier, but all things like this come with strings attached. When we were private equity backed, all they cared about was recurring monthly revenue and growing your recurring monthly revenue. So if you don't have a revenue stream that is recurring and grows, it's going to be very hard to get that kind of funding. I don't think we're talking about private equity or venture capital here, but that is my experiences. So think about money and profitability and how you can grow your business over time and be financially independent.
Yes.
Yeah, we're here to talk about money. We're
Yes. Well, thank you so much, and I just want to also say, Ellen, at the beginning you said, I don't have a business background, blah, blah, blah.
And what I just heard, I'm just like, she's a merchandising professional.
You're in, but like, that's amazing. And yeah,
stand in your power, like as women, again, we're here to talk about that and dispel a lot of the stigma and taboo that comes with talking about money. But I also agree that we have to think about the need first. I was actually having a conversation earlier with an attendee here that a lot of times we get super jazzed about an idea because like this
It's a good
solution, the
idea.
world needs my
Right.
solution. The world doesn't necessarily need your solution. What they need is their problem solved. So if you can format and think about how am I solving the problem here? You know,
And if people will pay for it.
if they will
Because
pay for you.
sometimes there's really great solutions, right?
Yeah.
To problems, but people don't value it enough to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just want to offer, because I do have a meeting,
Yes. Yes.
that I am thrilled to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only person with my name. So I'm really easy to find. Amy Dordak Dolinsky. Please feel free to reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn. Message me through LinkedIn. I'm happy to help any of you.
Thank you, everybody, so much. So we are at a little bit over time, so we'll probably encourage you to connect. If you do have specific questions, like I said, Amy's gotta run. But everybody, right, is available.
Yes.
Via, you know, this is not the end of the relationship. This is the starting of the relationship. So thank you so much. Again, thank you so much, Erin, and to All Together Now.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, everybody, and we will be having another session. We also have coming up our financial.
We have a couple announcements for programs.
Oh, there's your little mic.
Thank you. Kelly, can I give you a microphone to talk about the webinar that we have coming up? And then I'll talk about our financial cohort we have coming up. You have your mic.
I'll just share, so it is Thursday, August 22nd, so it's a little bit from less than a week away. The webinar is remote, and it's going to be going over tactics regarding personal and business credit. We are having a guest speaker, Gary Schneider, who used to work for Chase for 20 years in the commercial department. He also works for SCORE, and he's a business owner as well. We also have a cohort that's coming up that's called Data to Revenue, and it's a great program. I believe several of the panelists shared the different courses, webinars, classes, and we have information on that as well. It's a 6-week course, and it's advanced on understanding your financials and getting ready also as well for access to capital. So we're here to really be of support to all of you, and I just wanted to recognize and say thank you so much. You all were really important.
We will be having another Let's Chat Live. The next one is going to be in Aurora, so we'll be out in Aurora, and then we will have a blowout December version. I think we're going to be at Bronzeville Winery, so so definitely make sure you're checking in on our newsletters. If you haven't had an advising session in a while, please come see us. Like they said, we're happy. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Grab some snacks to go. Thank you.